ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦਿਸ ਐਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਦਾ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ੋ। ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਹਾਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਜੇਸਨ ਕੈਨੀ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਘੋਸ਼ਣਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਮੁਸਲਿਮ ਔਰਤਾਂ ਜੋ ਹਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਓਥ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਨਿਕਾਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਹਿਨ ਸਕਣਗੀਆਂ, ਆਪਣੇ ਮੂੰਹ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਕਵਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਣਗੀਆਂ। ਇਸਲਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਕਾਬ ਦੀ ਕੀ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਅਸਰ ਪੈ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਮੁਫਤੀ ਆਸਿਮ ਰਸ਼ੀਦ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ BC ਮੁਸਲਿਮ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਸ਼ਨ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ। We'll talk in English that what is the importance of niqab and how this decision can have an impact and what all needs to be done, why the government is taking this decision and what all the Muslims feel about it. Let's welcome Mr. Mufti Aasim Rashid. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So a little bit about yourself. How long you have been associated with the BC Muslim Association, and you are also talking about Islam in the masjids also. So a little bit about yourself.
I've been with the organization for about 2.5 years, and I am serving as their Director of Religion and Islamic Education.
Okay.
As well as their spokesperson on religious affairs.
Right.
So it's a variety of things that I do. Amongst them is, yes, I do speak in mosques to Muslims, non-Muslims, and I have my hands full with a lot of things.
That's good. So coming to this issue, what we are listening today is that there's a lot of stir in the community, controversy which has been created by this decision of the government. Yes. So if you could tell us, first of all, what is the importance of niqab according to Islam?
I think it can be summarized by first understanding the system of modesty that Islam projects. Niqab is a portion that falls into a broader context of protecting the honor and the dignity and the freedom of women.
Okay.
The general idea is that a woman's beauty, charm is her own business. And she should not feel obliged to express that and share that with everyone.
Right.
She can keep it to herself, and she can share it with the people that are near and dear to her, her immediate relatives, and of course the person that she has decided to spend the rest of her life with.
Right.
Aside from that, the other thinking that's going into this is to allow the human nature, which has a concept of modesty built into it. There is a concept of shyness, to allow that shyness to speak and that modesty to speak for itself. And this modesty is actually a barrier and a protection from many elements that could be harmful to society, they could be harmful to families. So when a woman comes into that system of modesty, she's protecting herself, she's allowed to be herself, she does not have to be judged by anyone. She can make contributions to society in her own way without being overly worried about her appearance.
Right.
And she's not competing with other people that, who is more attractive or who is, bringing more attention to themselves. At the same time, it puts an end to a lot of the problems that we are dealing with as a society.
Right.
And problems through which, because of which families are breaking, and our family structure generally is more or less falling apart.
Right.
So the hijab that Islam has projected in the Quran, our holy book, and through the prophetic teachings, it falls under 3 general categories. The first verse of hijab, and hijab here is in the general sense, meaning you can say a distance from men.
Okay.
In that context, the first verse that was revealed was actually in the house of the Prophet, peace be upon him, where there was a gathering of men and women, men actually, and the Prophet's wife happened to be sitting, and she was turned away in one corner, and the men were sitting and having their meal, and during that process, this verse was revealed, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, responded or implemented this verse by immediately putting up a curtain in his house.
Okay.
So that his wife could have her own privacy, and the men could be sitting on their own and enjoy themselves.
Right.
This verse was followed by numerous other verses, which further explained other kinds of, other levels of hijab, we can say.
Okay.
So, when we pick up the prophetic teachings, which are an explanation of the Quran, we find the women observing the first level of hijab, which is to more or less conceal their person entirely from the line of vision of men.
Right.
To the point where it was said that if you need to ask them something, then ask from behind a curtain. It's cleaner and purer for your hearts and the hearts of the women. So the women who were conscious of this were implementing this level of hijab. The next level of hijab is that a woman needs to come out of her house.
Right.
And that's going to happen. She has needs and necessities, and it could be a worldly need, such as going to buy something. She doesn't have someone to go shop for her. She can go for herself. It could be earning. It could be a religious need, like going to the mosque.
Right.
Now, how should she come out? So then that brings us to the next level of hijab, which is when she comes out, she should conceal herself entirely. And this is alluded to in a verse in a surah called Al-Ihsan. And in that, they are advised to take their sheets and draw their sheets near to themselves. And when we pick up the interpretations of how did the women of the time of the Prophet ﷺ implement that, we find that yes, they used to cover themselves entirely.
Right.
In fact, one of the wives of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when she was demonstrating this to another lady who had asked, how do we practice on this? She took her sheet and she draped it down over her face.
Right.
The wives of the Prophet, even when they were traveling for Hajj, the sacred journey, and in that sacred state of ihram, when they would be traveling in their caravan and nobody would be around, their faces would be uncovered because there's nobody to see them. But when men, unrelated men, would be coming from the other direction, other caravans, they would lower their veils.
Right.
So this is the second level of hijab, that a woman comes out but she's fully concealed. The third level is that she comes out and her whole body, except for her face and her hands, is covered. This brings us to the third level of hijab. This is permissible also. The face is not something that has to be covered all the time by a woman, but it's more of when there is a chance of her attracting attention to herself, attracting the attention of unrelated men to herself.
Right.
So it is advised that she cover herself. When that is not the case, she may expose her face.
Right.
This is a gist of this concept of hijab. So that kind of makes you understand, where does niqab fit in?
Right.
So I hope that's, I can go into a lot more detail, but I think that should suffice for
Absolutely. Thanks for letting us know what is the importance of hijab. We'll go for a break, come back, and this decision of the government, how you view it, how the Muslims are viewing it, we'll talk about that. एक छोटी जी ब्रेक लेने जी, जो इन्होंने दस्या सानू कि हिजाब की जिहड़ी महत्ता है उस संबंध विच कुरान शरीफ तो जो इन्होंने प्रॉफिट मुहम्मद साहब के बारे दस्या, इस संबंध विच तुहानू अगे शामिल करांगे कि जो ये फैसला लिया गया है सरकार वालों, साडा मुस्लिम भाईचारा इस बारे की महसूस करता है, इस ब्रेक तो बाद गलबात करते हैं। स्वागत करना जी एक बार फिर आप सब दा ब्रेक तो बाद। सो एक ਅੱਜ चिंता का विषय बनया कि जिथे कैनेडा विच फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच की असीं गल कर रहे हैं, फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रैशन की गल कर रहे हैं, सरकार वालों जिहड़े ऐसे फैसले लए जा रहे हैं, इसनूं किस नज़रिए नाल देखिया जा रहा है मुस्लिम भाईचारे विच? आओ कुछ होर जानकारी लैने हैं। So now the question rises, the government has taken this decision, and Mr. Kenny said that in a democracy where people have the rights and everything is there, but the women probably, in his statement what he said was that the Muslim women probably feel inferior if they are allowed to cover their face and to take the citizenship oath. So what do you have to say about that?
I think it's necessary to understand that niqab, or the veil, is a teaching, an Islamic teaching, that serves a specific purpose. When that purpose is met, it's being fulfilled even without the veil, then the veil is not an obligation on the woman.
Right.
Muslim women all over the world wear the veil, whether it's a part of the culture of that country or not, whether it's a part of the legal system of that country or not. Yet all of these women, when there is an official requirement of any sort, going to get a driver's license, going to get a passport photo, being identified for any official purpose, all of these women unveil.
Right.
And Islam allows that.
Right.
So taken in that perspective, for a woman to unveil for the sake of confirming her identity, is this really the person who is supposed to be here in this citizenship oath ceremony? And to verify that, is she actually uttering those words of oath? For her to unveil just for that purpose is not something against Islamic teachings.
Right.
Women are doing it for passports and for other things, and they can do it for this purpose as well.
Right.
there is nothing wrong with it Islamically. I think the issue is more about how the whole matter was presented.
Right.
It was presented in a very abrupt fashion, and it seemed almost like a mission that if it was achieved, it would be a triumph for somebody or for some ideology or for Canadian values.
Right.
And in the process, many things were left out, and many such things were done that needed to be left out.
Right.
For example, if it was to be taken into consideration that this is something practiced by a certain religious denomination, then the people of that religious denomination could have, or perhaps should have been consulted to find out what is the actual status of this in your religion.
Right.
But instead of that, speculations were made, very vague speculations. We have a very organized system in all aspects of our country, and we consult with experts and professionals that have a certain level of expertise in that given field, and we take that as a serious opinion.
Right.
That was not done. The second thing was speculations were made about what view of women this represents. In other words, it was interpreted on behalf of the Muslims.
Right.
That we think, in other words, we think you are looking at women in this way, and that's not acceptable to us. But we weren't asked, are you really looking at women that way?
Right.
What does that really portray? I think that's more for Muslims to say.
Right.
If the Muslims said, yeah, we think women are inferior and they just need to stay covered all the time, then you could have said, hey, that's not acceptable. That view is not acceptable.
Right.
But no Muslim has ever said that. Or, to make it easier, ask the women that are veiling, why do you veil?
Right.
And this may be news to many people, but in Canada, women are not being forced to veil by their men.
Right.
I don't know of a single case where a woman has been forced by her husband or father to cover her face.
Right.
Because it is, like I said, it's there to serve a specific purpose, under specific conditions, and it can be done and it should be done.
Right, and in actuality, if we see how many women actually are veiling, you know, that's another question which arises, that if we see the facts and figures, how many actually are veiling when they go and take the citizenship oath?
Maybe after these things, more women will start veiling.
Right.
I don't know. But so that was kind of, it was kind of unprofessional. To
So
just
the
assume.
manner in which this was done is unprofessional and not acceptable. That's what you are saying.
So these things were omitted. Some things that were done which should not have been done.
Right.
It was said that for women to previously have been covering her faces was ridiculous. It was called bizarre. It was said that I was incredulous when I heard this. What is so bizarre or so ridiculous about someone's religious choice? I don't think we are in a position to be judgmental about that.
Right.
When you do that, it's like you're scorning a group of people. And it was also clearly said that we are not just looking at the practical aspects of this. In other words, the fact that people need to be ID'd, the fact that we need to confirm the oath by seeing them verbally uttering it.
Right.
It was said emphatically that this is not our only consideration in this, but we want them to feel as full members of our community.
Right.
So in other words, that unless a woman unveils, or she shows you that she's ready to unveil, you're not ready to welcome her into your community. And I think those are the things that could have been left out.
Right.
It was a very simple matter, actually. Just like you would pass a rule or regulation in a license bureau,
Right.
that it's a requirement for anyone who's applying for this, that during that application process or during that part of the process, your face needs to be uncovered, and we need to confirm your identity. We need to make sure you're saying this.
Right.
And this rule applies to everyone. You didn't even have to single out a gender for that.
Absolutely.
Much less a specific religious denomination.
Right.
And then it looks like you're marginalizing, or you're targeting, or perhaps you're trying to win over the favor of people who don't agree with that way of life.
Right.
And then it becomes politicized.
Absolutely.
And I think then we
And
lose.
maybe even if the intention was not there, but then with these kind of things, one starts feeling that there is some hidden motive behind all these things.
And unfortunately, that's what people are thinking.
Right. So now the question is that what needs to be done? Because it's not that nothing can be rectified. What do you feel as Muslims? What would be your message that what can be done right now?
I think the first step for all Muslims is that they need to make sure they understand the issue for what it is in its Islamic context.
Right.
We should not blow this out of proportion. There's no need to get overly emotional.
Right.
And we should also not reject it as, oh, it's not a part of our religion anyways. And we're seeing both inclinations and tendencies. You need to come onto a common ground.
Right.
And that can only happen by education. If you yourself start speculating or start basing your opinions not on solid knowledge, then you're going to slip one way or the other.
Right.
You're going to take it to one extreme or the other extreme. So they should educate themselves.
Right.
And I think they should speak out about the approach. The approach needs to be corrected.
Right.
Such regulations are already in place in other bureaus.
Yeah.
People are respecting them and following them. And the approach definitely needs to be corrected. Otherwise, we don't know what the next thing will be.
Right. Mufti Saab, thank you very much for your time. Pleasure having you in the studio.
You're welcome.
And shedding light on this particular issue. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
إن الحجاب فريضة من ربنا